Hello everyone, it's time to talk about what else I saw in July. That's it, that's the intro. Movie number 1 is 1947's The Beginning or the End, a docudrama about the making of the atomic bomb. It's a bit curiously done. It starts with the principal figures, represented by the actors who will play them, attending the sealing of a time capsule that will be opened in 400 years, the contents of which include this very motion picture. Lots of people appear in this movie, but in my opinion, it's really Robert Walker and Tom Drake who star, Walker as a lieutenant colonel working closely with the scientists, and Drake as a newlywed physicist. His character is the real heart of the movie, with his boy-next-door likability and his grave, thousand-yard stare. At times, his concerns about the ethics of what they're doing and the far-reaching implications threaten to overwhelm him. I appreciate that the film takes a fairly middle-of-the-road approach. It's not just hoorah propaganda. It shows again and again that the responsibility of what they're doing weighs heavily on the men involved. Contrary to what some may think who have a cartoonish view of people in the past, there was a good deal of consideration given to the benefits and consequences. This is not a feat that they took lightly. Because it was filmed in 1946, though, and there was still a drive to keep up morale and still a production code in place, the film isn't allowed to be graphic. For instance, there is no footage shown of bomb victims in Japan. But it does get its point across, and I found it a sad and moving film, but also, believe it or not, inspiring and life-affirming, with a good ensemble cast and an attention to real-life details as near as they could manage at the time. Movie number 2 is My Life with Caroline, and let me tell ya, if this wasn't a Ronald Colman movie, I would probably hate it. Directed and co-produced by Lewis Milestone, Colman starred in and co-produced this 1941 romantic comedy in which his wife, played by Anna Lee, has a tendency to forget she loves him whenever she's away and gets starry-eyed about the nearest handsome man who says nice things to her. When he gets wind of this, Colman swoops in and intervenes, secretly rearranging the situation to ensure his wife returns to him. There's a lot to irritate here. The plot is driven by both infidelity and manipulation. Caroline is written to be an absolute ninny, but it seems to me her husband is a bit of a fool as well for wanting to reel her back in like this every time. His forgiving nature in the face of her flighty, almost cheating is very noble and all, but amazingly, they aren't miserable together, but the idea that she could forget that point is silly. And what kind of woman could fall in love with another man when she has witty, charming, affectionate, and handsome Ronald Colman at home anyway? That's the most absurd thing. Why does she keep leaving? If I was married to Ronald Colman, I would never leave. That wasn't scripted. Still, this movie wasn't as frustrating as it could have been. Colman is lovely, what else is new? There are funny parts, and the supporting cast is good, particularly Charles Winninger, as her father, Reginald Gardner as the first other man, and Hugh O'Connell as his oddball manservant. Oh, and dashing Gilbert Roland plays the other man. Can't be an accident that Caroline Swain physically resemble her husband, but he's no Colman. Movie number 3 is 2021's The Marksman, one of Liam Neeson's latest efforts. I must be a sucker because even though these senior action hero movies he makes haven't proven to be all that memorable, when this showed up on Prime, I was still like, oh, another one of those movies, we could watch that. At least Neeson's never phoning in his performances, and the roles he picks are well suited to him. He does well in the film, and the film is better for his presence. And these are real movies, writing, characterization, sets, action sequences, photography. It's all legitimate, not Oscar-worthy, but they're not garbage movies playing gotcha with the big-name draw. Anyway, Neeson plays a recently widowed man facing the possibility of losing his ranch on the US-Mexico border, who ends up helping a Mexican boy who's being pursued by thugs from a drug cartel. It's a decent movie, better than some of the other Liam Neeson action movies that we've watched. Its ending is a little vague, and the relationship with the boy doesn't develop quite as I expected, but it's fine. Movie number 4 is 1993's Miracle on Interstate I-80, based on a true story about the 1989 San Francisco earthquake, which caused a network of overpasses to collapse on each other, killing some drivers instantly and trapping the few survivors in their cars. Part of the film is about the earthquake and its immediate aftermath. The second half is about the dicey recovery journey for those who were saved and their families. The genre is more drama than disaster, I would say, as it's more of an emotional, feel-sad, feel-good film. It's a TV movie, and the acting from lesser characters isn't always great, but the featured actors carry it. It's got some impressive effects and blending of real footage and recreation, and it sufficiently conveys some disturbing stuff without actually showing anything. I have heard that the script took liberties with the truth. I can't speak to its quality as a historical representation, but as a film, I thought it was pretty good. Movie number 5 is 1978's Grey Lady Down. A nuclear submarine collides with a Norwegian ship and suffers significant damage that sends it plummeting downward until it comes to a precarious halt on a drop-off. With depleting oxygen and resources and a growing number of injured in dire need of medical attention, the survivors trapped in the sub wait anxiously for help to come. Charlton Heston stars, and he's really good here, underplaying his role of a captain on the verge of retirement who's trying to keep his men's spirits up. Stacy Keach co-stars as a naval captain in charge of the rescue operation, and David Carradine, playing another captain, comes in as an expert. It's a tense, gripping film, the kind that has you urging characters to hurry up. There's some needless conflict, like the power struggle between Keach and Carradine, that could have been cut out, but I suppose it does go with the territory. Other than that aspect of it, I enjoyed the film. There's one fine shot reminiscent of a key sequence in the Poseidon Adventure, and there were a couple striking similarities to Airport 77, which of course came out the year before. I would also point out that it has some elements in common with The Abyss, which came out a decade later. As I was watching, I made some fun connections. To pass the time, some of the crew watched Jaws. Quint's famous monologue in that movie is about the USS Indianapolis. Stacy Keach would go on to star as the captain of the Indianapolis in a 1991 film titled Mission of the Shark, which was pretty good. Also, this movie features both Christopher Reeve and Ned Beatty just before Superman came out. Reeves' role here is very small, and it's funny to see him popping up in the background, knowing he's on the verge of becoming a superhero superstar. Movie number 6 is 1952's Five Fingers, not to be confused with The Beast with Five Fingers, a Peter Lorre film that came out a few years earlier, and I think I've reviewed that one as well. Five Fingers is a World War II espionage thriller set in neutral Turkey, where British and German ambassadors stiffly commingle, keeping an eye on each other and an illegal firearm at the ready while enjoying each other's booze. James Mason stars as a British ambassador's valet who approaches the Germans with an expensive offer of top-secret information. They are eager to get their hands on it, but not sure if they can trust him. They wonder if he's offering genuine goods or trying to trick them. And so do we. This being James Mason, who could pull off characters on any level of the good-bad spectrum, it could go either way, and the story keeps you wondering for a long time. That's part of the fun of it. It's allegedly based on a true story, and it makes for an engaging film with exteriors shot on location in the spots events occurred. It's a rather twisted story, too, with a host of characters motivated by deep-rooted ambitions, and you can't take everyone at face value. Michael Rennie joins the film partway through with a trench coat and an air of confidence that suggests he's one person you can depend on. Also, the score by Bernard Herrmann is noteworthy, especially the music that plays over the darkroom sequence. Herrmann's presence as composer, plus the nature of the story and the setting and the presence of James Mason, caused me to wonder what this film would have been like had it been directed not by Joseph Mankiewicz, but by Alfred Hitchcock. No knock on Mankiewicz's direction, but this film has many features that would put it in Hitchcock's wheelhouse, and one can't help imagining. However, it's fine as it is. Particularly good is the pumped-up element of suspense, the audience forced to wait in agony for the inevitable to happen. The safe alarm sequence with the vacuum cleaner is excellent. Movie number 7 is 2020's Love and Monsters, in which Dylan O'Brien plays a young guy who's been living in an underground shelter for 7 years following a giant monster apocalypse that's killed 95% or so of the world's population. Despite a severe lack of experience and courage, he risks almost certain death to make the 85-mile journey on foot to reunite with his girlfriend. I'd heard good things about this when it came out, and it lived up to my expectations. It's pretty funny and creative, despite having familiar elements. Dylan O'Brien is much more interesting here than he was in those Maze Runner movies, which I found pretty lackluster. His character is full of flaws, but likable in spite of, and even because of that. The creatures are well designed, vivid in color, not just bland CGI mush. They do generally make the same clicky noises and roars as every other monster and alien that's made an appearance in the last 10 years or so, but they're unique looking and vibrant. I suspect this movie was influenced by the MonsterVerse films, Kong Skull Island and King of the Monsters, but it tells its story on a more intimate scale, with enough monsters but not too many, a lighter tone, and better humor. The script is constantly going in unexpected directions. The Mavis sequence is lovely. Michael Rooker's appearance as a sage survivor with an 8-year-old sidekick is great, and props to the designers, special effects people, etc. for being smart about background details, really making this look like a world that's been abandoned for 7 years. Movie number 8 is a 1949 film that takes place a couple years earlier, titled Sword in the Desert. Dana Andrews plays a churlish American boat captain who reluctantly agrees to sneak a group of Jewish refugees past the British and deposit them on the shores of Palestine. In order to get the rest of his payment, he must go on land with them, but when a British patrol arrives unexpectedly, he has to flee with the Jews to evade capture. This is a good movie. It does lag a bit in the middle, but the performances from the leads, Dana Andrews, Marta Torin, and Jeff Chandler, are strong. Andrews' character commits a selfish act at one point, one that made me really angry, so then in addition to the plight of the Jewish refugees seeking to evade the British and secure a safe haven, it was also kind of a will he or won't he redemption story. And this also turned out to be kind of a Christmas movie, so somewhat fitting for Christmas in July. We hear some Christmas hymns, and the last scene, this isn't really a spoiler, occurs near Bethlehem on Christmas Eve. Movie number 9 is 1951's Thunder on the Hill, a murder mystery set in an English convent hospital where an entire village has gone seeking shelter from a flood. Among their number is a convicted murderess, Anne Blythe, on her way to her execution. One of the nuns, Claudette Colbert, has a stubborn streak the habit can't suppress, and when she becomes convinced of the girl's innocence, she gets involved in an effort to clear her name before it's too late. This is a good movie, one of the lesser-known films of director Douglas Sirk, whose melodramas have earned him a devoted following. The characters are interesting, and the conflict has some hefty dynamics. The atmosphere is great, what with the storm, the suspicious locals, the castle-like convent with its bell tower, huge fireplace, and oddly shaped rooms. And there's a wonderful scene of a boat ride through floodwater swirling with thick mist, and you just know there'd be a werewolf lurking nearby if the water wasn't so deep. I did develop a firm suspicion pretty early on, so for me it wasn't so much a whodunit as a, am I right in thinking this person is guilty? Why did this person do it? And how is everyone else going to figure it out? And come to think of it, this happened before the details of the murder had been divulged, so I was sure I knew who did it before I even knew what it was. And as it turns out, I was right in my suspicions. But that's okay, I liked the movie anyway. Movie number 10 is a Russian sci-fi horror film from 2020 set in 1983 titled Sputnik. Two cosmonauts on a mission in space crash land back on Earth, where they're celebrated as heroes. But what the people don't know is that one of them has become the host for a parasitic organism that only comes out at night. An unconventional doctor is recruited on the sly to diagnose and treat the cosmonaut without getting herself killed in the process. My mom and I both really liked this one. It's derivative of Alien, with an aspect that also brought Relic to my mind, and part of it reminded me of that movie Life as well, but of course that is really derivative of Alien. It's a solid science fiction story with a steady focus that doesn't have to contend with an excess of characters or a cacophony of special effects. It's got some graphic imagery and violence, but for the most part that is tastefully handled. It's not full-on gross-out stuff. Either that, or I've become desensitized. The creature design was good, the moral dilemma was good, it had a big, creepy music score, methods used to show things not apparent to the naked eye added to the spooky factor. The only issue I had was with a couple lines at the end. We watched the English dub, because that was the default on the DVD and I just didn't change it, and we were both so confused by the last things the characters said and what they were supposed to mean. Last-minute bewilderment is a tough note to end on, but the movie was really good besides that. Movie number 11 is 1943's Five Graves to Cairo. Directed by Billy Wilder, this one stars Franchotone as a British officer who, in a great opening sequence, survives a German attack on his tank. He endures the North African desert long enough to stumble into a desolate inn just before the conquering Germans arrive in advance of Field Marshal Rommel himself. Tone comes to in a hurry and disguises himself as the hotel's deceased waiter, only to make the startling discovery that the waiter had a sketchy connection to the Germans. I'd seen part of this before, enough to make me wait a good long time before watching it so that I could forget as much as possible, and I guess it worked because I didn't recognize anything beyond the image of Franchotone limping around the hotel dressed as a waiter. Anyway, it's a very good movie. Tone is one of those guys that I don't generally find attractive when I just see a still image, but on film, under the right circumstances, I can reconsider, and he plays his part well. Co-starring are Anne Baxter as a sassy French chambermaid with her own plans, Akim Tamirov as the nervous Egyptian proprietor, Peter Van Eyck as a German lieutenant, and Erich von Stroheim as Rommel. Casting is good all around, and I especially enjoyed Fortunio Bonanova's performance as the boisterous but disgruntled Italian general. And it's a well-photographed film as well, with some excellent, choicely lit shots. Movie number 12 is 1981's Victory. Directed by John Huston, this is another World War II movie, one that I think is entirely fictitious, about a proposed soccer, that's football to everyone who's not American, match between an Allied POW team and a German team, and the Allied prisoners decide to use the match as an opportunity to pull off an escape. When's the last time I watched a sports movie? I don't know. Surprisingly, though, the match was the part I liked best. The first half of the film wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either, with Sylvester Stallone's surly American outsider making a nuisance of himself while trying to push his way onto the team. I got pretty fed up with that, but the second half was a lot of fun. I don't care much for sports, either as a participant, certainly not as a participant, or as a spectator, but I can get into a good game, and it was easy to get into this one. Probably because it was about a lot more than just a soccer match. Real-life Brazilian football star Pelé, widely considered the greatest player ever, co-stars as a fellow prisoner from Trinidad, who naturally makes the team. It also stars Michael Caine as a British footballer who coaches the team, and Max von Sydow as a Nazi major and former German footballer who suggests the match and can't resist getting excited for sheer love of the game. Also Carol Lahr, Tim Pickett-Smith, and Anton Diffring as the chief commentator. And I especially got a kick out of Daniel Massey's performance as the British CO. He had some hilarious reactions and facial expressions. Movie number 13 is one I saw a number of times back in the day, 1977's Tentacles, in which a giant octopus terrorizes a seaside community. Certainly it's heavily inspired by Jaws, and it tries with dubious success to recreate that movie's winning formula. Not as much as some people claim, though. A significant portion of the storyline revolves around a sailboat competition. And the massive sailboat attack is something that actually happens in Jaws 2, which came out in 1978. This movie technically came out in 1977, but the date at the end of the credits is 1976. I'm not saying that Jaws 2 stole its plot from Tentacles, but a lot of people like to say, oh, Tentacles is just another Jaws ripoff. And are Jaws ripoffs a dime a dozen? Absolutely. But maybe this one isn't quite so much of a ripoff as people think. That's all. This is an Italian-made film with American actors in the lead roles. John Huston directed the last movie and stars in this one, along with Shelley Winters and Bo Hopkins. I mentioned last month that my mom has long counted Bo Hopkins among her favorite actors. His prominent good guy role here as the marine biologist who figures it all out is the main reason why I saw this movie several times as a youngster. I forgot pretty much everything in the last 20 years or so, but I did recognize a lot as it came. Claude Akins and Henry Fonda are also in it, Fonda very briefly. This movie recently scored a Blu-ray release, and definitely the quality is much better than the taped VHS copy we used to watch. It's not a great movie, though. It's got some slow spots. Most of the stuff with the octopus isn't too convincing. Transitions from one scene to the next can be disjointed at times. Some of the photography choices were odd, causing me to wonder, why on earth did they shoot this scene this way? And I didn't care much for the music score, where the scary harpsichord cues were often poorly timed, and the chase music was a little too funky. But for all that, I don't think it's as bad a movie as some people say. The stars are amusing, and I give the movie credit for being gutsy with its choice of victims. It'll kill off anyone, and you learn that right off the bat with the snatching of a baby in the opening sequence. It's a really well done opener, with great, stretched out suspense. I kinda wish the rest of the movie was edited that tightly. Movie number 14 is 1965's Morituri, a war film in which Marlon Brando plays a German laying low in India with fake Swedish papers. He gets ferreted out by Trevor Howard, who blackmails him into going undercover aboard a German freighter carrying a valuable load of rubber. Brando is instructed not to blow up the ship, but to obtain its cargo for the British. Yul Brynner plays the ship's captain, a German on shaky ground with his superiors because of his past history, so Brando's presence as an apparent secret policeman is a sore spot. If you tune in looking for some clashes between the two of them, you'll get them, but they're not quite as hot-tempered as I expected. This is a movie where the plot keeps changing course, forcing the main character to think fast and adapt, and it's often impressive what he comes up with. It's well photographed with some neat tricks, it's well acted, and features an interesting score by Jerry Goldsmith somewhat early in his distinguished career. It goes in some grim directions, though, and this ended up being one of those movies where I recognized all that was good about it, but in the end, I'm not sure how much I enjoyed it. Movie number 15 is 1946's Somewhere in the Night, a film noir in which John Hodiak stars as a Marine wounded in battle who has lost his memory. He's released from the service after the war, but having no idea who he is or where he belongs, he goes on a quest to figure out his identity, with only a couple letters as clues. It's a good movie, a good noir. Yet another amnesia story, I know, but hey, it's an appealing starting point for a mystery. Nancy Guild co-stars as a nightclub singer he bumps into who ends up helping him. She bears a marketable resemblance here to noir queen Jean Tierney. Richard Conte plays her boss, who's pleased to offer any assistance, and Lloyd Nolan stands out as the police detective. His is a fun character, and the movie knows it, often giving him the spotlight whenever he shows up. It's got some lovely photography, especially in darkly lit locations like the asylum. I was not at all surprised by a certain reveal that comes at the very end. I won't say any more about it, except to say that even though that twist was kind of a fizzler for me, and I would have been more surprised if it never happened, it didn't spoil the movie for me. And movie number 16 is 1960's Sergeant Rutledge. Director John Ford seamlessly combines genres in this courtroom drama western about a black cavalry officer charged with rape and murder in 19th century Arizona. The trial is swarmed with local busybodies, the morbidly curious and the supposed righteously indignant, all of them eager for a hanging and dismissive of the statute that a man is innocent until proven guilty. Woody Strode plays the accused, giving a great performance throughout and a striking turn in one particular moving scene. Jeffrey Hunter plays the officer who takes up his defense, to everyone's dismay, determined to see justice carried out. He's wonderful here as well, and I'm not just saying that because I think he's hot. He was also a fine actor with a natural and sincere air who seldom gets the praise he deserves. This is a gripping film, mature in some of its content, yet tactful in the way the subject matter is dealt with. Tension is high throughout, and tempers are frequently on the verge of exploding as new information is introduced. Yet it's also got a good deal of humor, moments of absurdity with uncooperative spectators or witnesses like charming Billy Burke, or the exasperated panel of judges giving the audience much-needed relief and diversion. And visually, the film is beautiful. Technicolor enhances the pink of Constance Towers' costume, the blue of Jeffrey Hunter's eyes, the red of a splash of blood, the gold glint of a cross pendant. And Ford being Ford, many sequences take place in stunning Monuments Valley. Reminiscent in various ways of The Searchers, which Ford made a few years prior, this film features some great shots where Ford does wonderful things with lighting and framing. But the shot that took my breath away early on has Towers waving at a departing train that's leaving her all alone at the station. I love the way the steam ominously fills the frame, while the station behind her is lit from within by an eerie blue light. I don't know how other people feel about this one, but I thought it was a great movie, with an artistic quality and a timelessness in its message that gives it lasting significance. And that's everything! That was a lot of movies! Wow, I'm tired! I hope you enjoyed this collection of reviews. Let me know what you think of any of the movies if you've seen them down in the comments below, and stay tuned for the next review. Thanks for watching!